What are the two most common scales used in Western music? Well, the major and minor scales. And they also are the most common ones for beginner students to learn. But oh my goodness, how is a beginner student supposed to memorize all of this when you could start those scales on any of these lovely 88 black keys? Well, in this video, I'm going to share how to understand and play beginner minor scales, plus the difference between major and minor scales. And as always, we're going to be using this new knowledge to create mini songs. Now, if you've missed the beginning of this series and you're feeling a little lost, I would highly recommend check out the playlist. It might be up here or it will for sure be in the description. If we haven't met before, I'm Rosemary Penner, online piano teacher and composer at Must Love Music. I help make learning piano fun, simple, and interactive with creative ideas and resources to bring on those smiles. I gotta admit, I used to get so confused about all the different kinds of scales. Analyzing patterns was definitely not my jam back in the day. But as a teacher, I found ways to reach all my students. Some of them were very analytical. Unlike me back in the day, some were very visual and some are more auditory. And so there's many different ways to learn. In this video, we're going to be using one of them. In my lessons, I definitely use a lot of different ways to teach the same thing. Quick reminder, we are building on what we did in last week's video, which was how to play beginner major scales on the piano. Because we're building on it, if you haven't seen it, I would recommend pause. You might see it up here or you'll for sure see it in the description. Last week, we had talked about how music loves patterns and that major scales follow a pattern, and guess what? Minor scales do as well. What we're going to do is use a series of half steps and whole steps in a particular pattern. We're only going to use the 5 notes that start the scale. So usually scales, we've got 5-note scales. These ones are going to be called minor pentascales, and then we've got full octave scales. The reason we're starting with the penta or 5-note scales is because it's a lot easier on our fingers when we're first starting out. When you're looking at this on the piano, if you're going the difference between major and minor scales, there's actually only one note in this particular one that's going to be looking a bit different. That should make it a little easier as you're jumping back and forth between them. So I did say I was going to share the difference between major and minor. Well, our major had whole step, half step, whole step. Our minor, we take those 2 middle intervals and we switch them. You'll see our minor is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. And because we change these 2 right in the middle, it actually makes a really cool and different sound. Let's take a look at what that looks like on the piano. Now, just before I jump there, if you have used gems before, we've used them in previous videos, you can get them at the craft store. That's a great idea, just if you're a visual person. All right, so let's start playing some of these minor scales on the piano. We are going to be starting with A minor. So let's find our A. We're looking for 3 black keys, and in between our 2 top ones, that's where A is. We'll start with right hand first. And so let's do our minor pattern. We're going to do a whole step, then a half step, whole step, and whole step, then going back down. Whole step, half step, notice they're right next to each other, and whole step. This is what it sounds like without me cueing. As always, we want to make sure that we go up or to the right and then down or to the left. For our left hand, let's find, again, 3 black keys, find those top 2. We're finding A, it's right there. And let's play the scale. A, B, C, D, E, E, D, C, B, A. And of course, we want to stretch our brain, so we're going to play this hands together. You may find it fairly easy. If you're finding it difficult, don't worry, it is completely normal to feel like your brain is being pulled apart like this. As you're learning piano, that will happen not every week, but it will happen. Don't worry, it's completely normal. It gets easier. So let's start on A. A, B, C, D, E, down, E, D, C, B, A. Excellent. Let's try C minor. Okay, so we started with C major last time. You'll notice we didn't start with it. We're going to start with C minor. So let's play left hand starting this time. So whole step, and then we need a half step, whole step. So we're going to go half step, and then whole step. Going down, whole step, half step, and whole step. So here's what it sounds like without me saying all of the pattern. Let's do this with our right hand. Again, you can pause at any point and practice these on your own. Excellent. And if you need to play slower, that is totally fine. I've been playing for decades, so we should hope that I can play these scales fairly quickly. And let's do this hands together. C, D, E flat, F, G, back down, G, F, E flat, D, C. Excellent. Now remember, you can start on any note, any of these 88, as long as you follow the whole step, half step, whole step pattern. All of these scales are just based on how far apart are each note within it. So as always, the best way to learn is to test things out, to improvise with them. And so we're going to improvise, create some music on the spot using a minor scale. To keep things easy, let's start back on A. So find those 3 black keys, the top 2, we found A. And I'm going to do a little bit lower this time. I'm going to start with my left hand. And remember, most melodies, they include repeat notes. So notes that we play more than once. We go up or down a few notes before switching direction. And when we add rhythm, so some of the notes are shorter or some of the notes are longer, it makes your piece, your song, a little bit more interesting. So here's an example of an A minor mini song. Well, that sounded kind of fun, hey? And if I was to do that in my right hand, I could create something different, right? Still the same scale. So that one, I spent more time going up than I did going down. I would highly recommend, make sure that you test this out, try it out on your piano. Again, best way to learn, just try it out. And once you've played an A minor, try it in different keys as well. Let's do a quick review of minor scales on the piano. So first, minor scales follow a specific pattern of half steps and whole steps. The pattern is whole step, half step, whole step, whole step. We can create melodies using this particular scale by repeating notes, going up or down on the piano, and switching directions. Adding rhythm adds even more interest, and so this makes our scales a lot more interesting to play. I would love to hear from you. What was the most challenging part, or maybe the easiest part, of learning these minor scales? By the way, next week we are looking at another 5-finger scale and 5-note scale. It's used in a lot of different genres of music. It's slightly different, but it's going to sound quite different. So if you haven't subscribed, please make sure you do so that you get a notification when that video comes out.